Chapter 32. Mama said of me that I never ask for anything. How do I know what you want if you don't ask? Maybe it was because I lacked the confidence to believe that I would ever get anything that I asked for. Or maybe I was conditioned to believe that even if I asked and received, I wouldn't enjoy the fruits of my labor much anyway. It was not as if I didn't have a good example in the art of asking. After the scare of sleeping in the car, Dor intensified her efforts to get a dog. She began by reciting all the scary incidents of the past, present, and future that a dog would save us from. When that didn't seem to be working, she began reciting all the things that we didn't have. Papa retorted, "Name one thing you've asked for that you haven't got." Dor was Johnny on the spot. A dog. Papa got up from his chair and headed for the stairs. Who would take care of a dog? It was a negative response, not a question. Actually, we had more pets during our lifetime than we gave Papa credit for, including Dor's mouse, ducks, cats. Getting cats had been easy. They simply appeared on our back porch one day. Before Papa came home from the office, we had figured out who was going to feed them. Who? Dor and I. What? Milk, you dummy. In what? Mama's fancy gravy boat. As for names, we were already racking our brains. The orange one should be Never Macket, Dor said, 'cause Papa says that once upon a time, Seattle was called Cat Heaven. Papa came up the back steps. Does Mama know you've got her good gravy boat out here, feeding cats? Dor acted like that was irrelevant. She was trying to keep Never Macket in her lap. Papa, can we keep the cats? Yeah, Mama says cats are the best pets 'cause they eat mice. I was pulling burrs out of the gray cat, which we had not named yet. Yeah, Mama says that's what cats are for. Tell us about your cats in Wisconsin, Papa. Papa set his briefcase on the top step and sat down. Never Macket rubbed up against his leg. Our cats didn't eat out of fancy gravy boats. I could squirt milk from the cow's faucets right into a cat's mouth. At the milk squirting contest at the county fair, I got the blue ribbon. We doubted that. Before or after you walked 10 miles in the snow. Mama came out and picked up the gravy boat, saying that none of her cats had enjoyed such finery. These ones won't either. What will they eat out of, Mama? They can eat out of the old cracked mush bowls. We took that to mean we could keep the cats. Then what will we eat out of? Dor asked. Well, maybe it's time we bought some new cracked mush bowls, Papa said. With that, we began our search for another name, but Fleur came out and said that it was bad luck to name a cat who had already been named. After that, we just called them Gray Kitty and Orange Kitty. Dor intensified her Get a Dog Now campaign one night when Papa was in a good mood. We were eating popcorn. We all loved popcorn. Papa taught us how to make it. Put a handful of kernels into the wire popper, then shake it vigorously over the gas burner in the kitchen while the butter is melting on the other burner. Then spread the butter very evenly, spoonful by spoonful. He had it down to a science. We didn't. Our efforts often prompted remarks such as, "Who's burning down the house?" Dor began by talking about pets in general. "Tell us again about once upon a time when Seattle was called Cat Heaven." Papa laughed. This was just one of the many stories Papa told us about his years as commissioner and recorder in the 4th Division of the Territory of Alaska. During the Alaska Gold Rush, there was a great need for dogs to pull the sleds. So, before the gold miners left Seattle and headed north, they stripped the town of all strays. That's why Seattle was called Cat Heaven, because cats are happiest when there are no dogs around. Then did they call Alaska Dog Heaven because there were no cats around? Not exactly, Dor. It's a case of feelings not being mutual. Even though cats don't like dogs, dogs like cats. They love to chase them around. Having so many dogs in Alaska made it hard on the few cats there. Papa was really warming up. Hardly a day'd go by what we'd see a cat being chased through town by a howling dog team. Of course, the sled drivers hated cats, even though they helped cut down on the food bill. With all the ruckus of chasing cats, the dogs would get hopelessly tangled up in their harnesses. If you've never seen a hungry, howlin', tangled-up heap of unpedigreed mutts trying to get the first bite out of a cat, you've never seen one of the great shows on Earth. Mama said, "Roy, I wish you wouldn't tell the girls these stories." Papa continued. The drivers accused the saloon owners of raising cats just for the purpose of throwing them out into the street when the dog sleds were going by. It always attracted a big crowd. When it was over, the spectators would come into the saloon to discuss the debacle, over a few drinks, of course. We were down to picking out the kernels. "Papa, can we have a dog?" The next day, Papa brought home a German Shepherd puppy whom we named Wolf. When fully grown, he was small for his breed but large for a bread box. Papa called him a one-man dog, which seemed a strange way of saying that Wolf only liked us 3 girls. The fact is, Wolf didn't like any men, including Papa. That was okay, because Papa wasn't crazy about Wolf either. The only thing that they had in common was popcorn. Mama suggested professional training, but Dor felt that after her success with her mouse, she was qualified. For some reason, however, her training didn't work. Wolf came and went according to his whims. His bravery was according to his whims, too. Instead of pursuing the enemy, he would get tangled up in our feet. The time came, however, that Wolf, according to Dor, saved us from a terrible fate. If I hadn't let Wolf out of the car when I did, you'd have been chopped up for chop suey. It began one night when we were all in the front room eating popcorn. Papa was soaking his feet and reading his paper. Here's an interesting item. Strange appearance sighted in woods east of Snohomish. What kind of strange appearance? Mama asked, pouring more hot water into the tub Papa was soaking in. I'm not sure, it just says a large, misty, watch it, that water's hot, form appears over the tops of the trees. Sounds spooky, Mama said. What do they think it is? Doesn't say. Several nights later, Papa read more. Ice cream ghost reappears. We were eating popcorn, of course. Ice cream ghost. What is an ice cream ghost? We said in unison. I only know what I read in the paper, and the paper says that this large, misty form, which looks like a big ice cream cone, is being sighted almost every night in a heavily wooded area. We were intrigued. We had heard plenty about ghosts, but never about one that looked like an ice cream cone. Ghost stories had been our favorite pastime before the radio. As far back as I can remember, Papa had read stories out of books. The proper setting was a darkened room on a stormy night, with wind screeching around the eaves and a dog howling in the distance. When we got older, we got to making up our own stories, guaranteed to scare your socks off. Eventually, we advanced to neighborhood productions on the dark back steps, where just a little light came through the kitchen curtains. We didn't always have the howling wind, but we hardly missed that because Dunny and Port, the experts on ghosts, supplied their own weird sound effects. Mama read the next report about the sightings. It sounded too much like the Frankenstein reports to me. Women are fainting on the spot. Does that mean they have nurses out there to put the women back in their seats? Dor asked. Darn women, they shouldn't be out there in the first place, Papa proclaimed. He finally concluded, I suspect that it's some kind of hoax. Maybe the reporters are trying to get people's minds off the depression. The story didn't take Papa's mind off the depression, or his gout. He continued to soak his feet every night, reading the accounts of bread lines and bank failures, along with those of the ice cream ghost. However, it certainly took my mind off the depression, to which I had never been very dedicated anyway. All of Seattle was talking about the ice cream ghost. The kids at school talked about it. The kids at the pool talked about it. Every night in bed, Dor talked about it. Wouldn't you like to go and see the real live ghost? Floor said, Ghosts are not real or alive. I said, shut up and go to sleep. The real excitement began one late afternoon when Joe Bowen and Tubby Crowthers, our Seward coaches, dropped by. The men had come from their part-time jobs as service station attendants and were still in their white uniforms. Joe said, let's go out and look for the ice cream ghost. I'm for it. Tubby was always for anything Joe suggested. There's Chinese bootleggers in that area, you know, Papa said cautiously. On the other hand, maybe we can pick up a bottle of rum. Mama had evidently been thinking up reasons for not going. It's too dangerous, and it's cold and damp out, and Roy shouldn't be out on his sore foot. Joe's wife, Helena, added, Joe and Tubby shouldn't get their white uniforms dirty. The men ignored all of that. We'd better get going right now so we can find the place before dark. We can all fit into Mama's car, Papa said. Mama now had a big 9-passenger Buick. It was a tight squeeze, especially because Dorothy insisted on taking Wolf, who was used to stretching out in comfort. This was definitely not comfort. By the time we turned onto a tiny, rutted road, Papa had turned on the headlights. They made creepy forms of the tall trees. Branches of the underbrush scraped against the fenders. One turn was so sharp, we all had to get out so the men could bounce the car around. What if the ghost starts to chase us and we can't make it back around the turn? I asked Flor. When she didn't answer, I looked and saw that she was as wide-eyed as when she had experimented with false eyelashes. Finally, we arrived at a small clearing. It was that sliver of time between light and dark when everyone wants to be going home. Papa drove in amongst several randomly parked cars and turned off the headlights. Near the edge of the forest, a small knot of dark figures had gathered around a low fire. Papa gave instructions, but the minute he opened the door, the instructions went out the window, so to speak. Wolf jumped out and dashed madly around, howling all the way. We all jumped out in pursuit. Finally, Papa, hobbling and waving his cane, caught him. "Keep this damn dog." Mama calmed Papa down by generously offering to stay in the car with Dor and Wolf. Helena generously offered to stay in the car, too. I was generously offering my services as well, but Fleur tugged at me, and I became part of the procession headed toward the fire. The folks there were still trying to recover from Wolf's escapade, and when they spotted the white uniforms, they reacted with, "Geez, it's a couple of ghosts." A small woman crouched near the fire. "They're from one of them loony houses." Joe tried to calm them down, while Papa asked about the ice cream ghost. The woman spoke in a whisper. "Yep, it comes up right over there." "You've seen it before?" "Yep, lots of times." She couldn't keep her eyes off of the white uniforms. Papa asked, "Do you know where the bootleggers are?" "Bootleggers? What's down that trail?" Papa pointed to a barely visible opening in the dense underbrush. "You don't want to go down that there trail. There's death down that there trail." The words were no sooner out than Tubby and Joe headed toward the trail. Papa hobbled behind. I hesitated, but Fleur grabbed me by the arm. The trail was so slippery that it was hard to keep our footing. The underbrush slapped against our faces, and the white forms ahead of us took on ghost-like qualities. Eventually, we came to a small rutted road, crossed a small bridge, and discovered an old, dilapidated barn standing out against the fading color of the dark sky. I thought that, if it was cut out of a piece of material, something had surely gone wrong with its warps and woofs. As we came closer, we could see the reflection of a small fire. "What is that awful smell?" I finally found my voice. "It's the stinky brown house smell, dummy," Fleur whispered. "It's probably where they keep the still," Papa said. As we crept forward, we were able to make out the figure of a contorted old man. "He's the lookout," Joe whispered. "He's a Chinaman," Papa whispered back. We crept closer. Evidently, the man didn't become aware of our presence until we were looking right into his face. At that moment, I almost dropped out of my skin. One dark slanted eye was looking at Joe's white uniform while the other was looking right at me. At the sight of us, he let out a high-pitched howl. I am unable to report his words because I don't understand Chinese, but from what ensued I have deduced that it was the equivalent of, "Jiggers, the cops!" Papa spoke very slowly, trying to be heard over the pathetic howl. "We all looking for the bootleggers. We want to buy some lum." Papa was very good at speaking Chinese. The pathetic man shook his head. "No lum, no lum." The conversation continued with Joe and Tubby trying out their Chinese, but finally, the men decided since there was no lum, we might as well let ulm to the cow. Papa started hobbling back down the dark road, followed by Joe and Tubby in their slightly luminous uniforms. It was the last time we were to see them so white and spotless. We had just crossed the bridge and were searching for the opening to the path when things began to happen, fast. We heard an ominous sound and felt vibrations. Something was coming at us. I felt Papa's hand grabbing me, and before I could say "Flying Finnegan," I was sailing toward the underbrush. While I was still in the air, I set a world record in vow-making. If I ever get back alive, I'll study. Get all A's. Get on the honor roll. Practice piano. Double my swimming laps. Finish my hope chest. Write to mother. Flora and I landed together in the thorny bushes, clutching and clawing. Before we could struggle to our feet, a huge, black thing thundered so close nearby, I could have scratched my name on the fender. "That's the Chinese bootleggers," Papa rasped. Something wet and snarling crashed on top of us. It was smaller than a bread box. Even though Dor hadn't been a first-hand witness, she was convinced that Wolf had pulled us from the clutches of death. She scoffed at the newspaper's account the next day. "Ice cream ghost fails to appear." "Course it didn't," Dor proclaimed. "Wolf scared it away." Flora and I suffered multiple bruises. Papa was suffering from the abuse to not only his bad foot, but his good foot as well. He summed up the whole adventure to Mac. "Bad tlip, no lum.